A pleasant afternoon to everyone. Today marks another milestone for the APEC member economies as the APEC 2015 Finance Ministers meeting and related meetings culminate in the creation of the Cebu Action Plan, a roadmap towards a more inclusive and resilient Asia-Pacific region. To celebrate this significant undertaking and the successful conclusion to the Philippine hosting of the APEC 2015 Finance Ministers process, the Department of Finance of the Government of the Philippines presents this commemorative sculpture as a symbol of the efforts to boost regional cooperation. May we now call on the Philippines Finance Secretary Cesar V. Purisima, China's Deputy Minister of Finance Xi Yaobin, and Peru's Vice Minister of Economy Enzo de Filipi to unveil the sculpture. Gentlemen, at the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Ladies and gentlemen, the APEC Finance Ministers process commemorative marker. The marker's design takes its cue from the balangay, wooden boats of antiquity used in fishing, trade, and communications among the islands of the Philippines, as well as the Philippines and our neighboring countries in the Asia-Pacific, with the flowing brass lines resembling the waves of the waters, keeping APEC economies geographically apart. The balangay is a vessel binding various cultures and peoples together in shared prosperity. The balangay is held up by 4 pillars, representing the 4 pillars of the Cebu Action Plan. The marker's crown is inspired by the blazing flames of the torch to symbolize the APEC's role as the guiding light for development in the member economies, and to bring to mind the image of the Olympic torch relay, a tradition that speaks of how we share in each other's commitment to collective progress. The flames are also fashioned to form the letters A, P, E, and C, and each of these could be appreciated from a particular angle. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, the APEC Finance Ministers process commemorative marker. May we now request the heads of delegation to please stand and face the marker for a photo opportunity. Thank you. May we now request everyone to please take their seats. Our moderator for the press conference is Ms. Michelle Remo.
Honorable Finance Ministers, heads of delegations, development partners, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the joint press conference of Finance Ministers of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation. In the past 2 days of meetings of APEC Finance Ministers, all 21 member economies were represented. As such, the Philippines Department of Finance extends its appreciation to the active participation of fellow member economies. Following a series of meetings that started as early as January in Clark, Pampanga, delegates finally have completed their inputs to the Cebu Action Plan. CAP serves as a legacy that will help guide member economies in their pursuit of financial integration, fiscal reforms and transparency, financial resilience, and infrastructure development and financing. With its formal launch today, APEC member economies better manifest the desire to achieve a more inclusive and sustainable growth for Asia Pacific. Meantime, besides the firming up and the launching of the CAP, the past 3 days of meetings here in the wonderful island of Mactan, Cebu were likewise spent drafting the 2015 Joint Ministerial Statement of the APEC FMP. And to expound more on the CAP in the Joint Ministerial Statement, may I ask Honorable Cesar Purisima, Finance Secretary of the Republic of the Philippines, to give an opening statement.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. We, the finance ministers of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, conclude the 22nd meeting by launching the Cebu Action Plan, coming together and agreeing on a regional, collaborative action agenda for a sustainable financial future. The Cebu Action Plan is a voluntary and non-binding roadmap towards a more prosperous, financially integrated, transparent, resilient, and connected Asia-Pacific region. We have identified action programs under 4 pillars that will support the Cebu Action Plan, namely promoting financial integration, advancing fiscal reforms and transparency, enhancing financial resilience, and accelerating infrastructure development and financing. The Cebu Action Plan continues the progress towards the Bogor goals of free and open trade and investment. It is our hope that the Cebu Action Plan is going to be referred to again and again in a similar way to how the trade ministers continually referred to the Bogor goals of 1994 in order to gauge progress in their discussions. This is the result of extensive involvement of every stakeholder, from the member economies to the international financial institutions and private sector leaders that we engage from Clark to Cebu. We note in particular the productive partnership we enjoyed with the private sector in building this roadmap. We have made the Cebu Action Plan available in full across various media. I now open the floor to questions.
Thank you very much, Secretary Purisima. Before asking for questions, first some house rules. Members of the media who would like to ask questions may raise their hand, get acknowledged, may proceed to the microphone, and should state his or her name and affiliation before asking the question. In the interest of time and to give chance to as many individuals as possible, journalists are requested to ask 1 question plus, if necessary, 1 follow-up question at a time. Also, besides questions on the Cebu Action Plan and the Joint Ministerial Statement, journalists are also welcome to ask questions about the Asia Region Fund's passport, the signing ceremony for which has just been concluded. Please note that after this round of press conference, we will call on representatives of the Financial Sector Roundtable to join Philippines Finance Secretary Cesar Purisima and Peru's Vice Minister for an immediate next round of press conference on the highlights of the 2-day Financial Sector Roundtable, which ran parallel to the Finance Minister's meeting. The floor is now open for questions. Who would like to ask the first question? Our setting may be too formal, but please don't be shy. I know you have a lot of questions for our ministers. Yes, please.
Good afternoon to all the ministers. I'm Joyce Balancher from UNTV. My question is for Secretary Purisima. So hosting big events like APEC can be really tough. So what are the benefits of the country's APEC hosting, and will we host more international events?
First, the APEC is a unique organization in that, one, it covers economies that comprise over half of the world's GDP. Two, in terms of potential for our country, it offers the most direct and immediate potential. And third, unique in the sense that it's non-binding and it allows us to freely exchange ideas so that we can accelerate the integration of the region. The advantage of hosting events like this is that one, we expose the country to not only our colleagues and their team, but the press who cover each of the member countries, so that we can share with the world what we have done the past 5 years under the Aquino administration, where we've been able to accomplish growth that we haven't seen in the Philippines, at least in the past 40-something years.
Will there be other international events that we're expected to host?
Well, the Philippines is scheduled to host the ASEAN and be chair of the ASEAN in 2017. And I believe there are other events that are being planned.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, please.
Christian Isigaro from ABS-CBN. Secretary Purisima, what were the major sticking points during deliberations for the Cebu Action Plan?
Well, there were really no sticking points, no, because what we did was to really offer flexibility in the framework to make sure that the Cebu Action Plan can accommodate changes, additions, and offer flexibility to the next host. Peru will be hosting in 2016 and Vietnam thereafter, no, and so on and so forth. The idea is to make this a living plan, a living document that allows it to grow as the members sees fit. And I think that is the key to making sure that this framework will be able to accomplish its vision of free trade and free flow of investments in the region, good governance and sound fiscal position, deeper financial markets that allow for financial inclusion and resilience to global market volatility and natural disaster, as well as more financing for infrastructure. I think in a sense, making it flexible allows it to be more, allows it to address the needs of the region, especially with the flexibility that it will give the next host.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Good evening. I am Jade Miguel from the People's Television Network. I would like to address my question to Peru. So, sir, we all know that Peru will be the host of APEC in 2016. Will you be willing to take the role of continuing to promote the Cebu Action Plan?
Thank you very much for the question. We think that the Cebu Action Plan marks the. I mean, it's our vision. It's a vision that the countries of APEC will be implementing during the next 10 years. How Peru envisions this, we will focus on several aspects of the Cebu Action Plan, where we have some experience and we have some stories to tell, to share with other members of APEC. First, we want to stress the topic of financial inclusion. Peru is one of the few countries within APEC that has a strategy for national strategy for financial inclusion. And secondly, we will like to promote discussion on disaster risk financing and insurance, which is a topic that has the aim to build financial resiliency, and it allows us to learn from each other's experiences. And thirdly, the third topic we would like to address among the many that conform the 4 pillars of the CAP, of the Cebu Action Plan, is PPP in infrastructure. That's a topic where we have advanced further, and that's something that we think we can share with others.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Who would like to ask the next question? Yes, please.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Mads Miraflor of Manila Bulletin. I just want to ask, how optimistic are we that the economies can achieve its short-term initiatives under the Cebu Action Plan?
Well, that is one of the reasons why we engage the private sector in this whole process. No? As you know, a lot of the reforms here or the proposals here will require cooperation between the public and the private sector. And during the past 2 days, we've had a parallel session. The official part, the senior officials, the deputies, and then the ministers today. And then on the other hand, we had the APEC chairing with Dr. Decree the seminar or the session with the private sector. And over lunch today, we had the opportunity to exchange ideas. No? And in fact, during the lunch, we already heard a lot of feedback that I think we can bring to our respective countries so that we can be more responsive to the needs of business and bring to life the various pillars of the Cebu Action Plan. For example, today we were talking about how we can have more inclusive financing across the region. And I heard several suggestions that are very relevant to us. For example, it was mentioned that the risk weighting for SME lending is higher than commercial lending. So we will sit down with the regulators and see if there is room for adjustment for that. There was also a suggestion that we facilitate the registration process or the gathering of documents necessary for micro borrowers to be able to borrow from microfinance institutions. Again, that is something that we will discuss and implement. No? So this will be a work in progress. This will be a journey. But the important thing is that we do not lose sight of the vision and the benefit to us of achieving that vision.
Sorry, just a quick follow-up on the ARFP. I understand that 6 signatories, the ARFP attracted 6 signatories. I just want to ask why Singapore was not included in the signatories. Thank you.
Singapore has been an active participant in the working group all the way through. This is a very important trade liberalization initiative in our region. It's designed to reduce the level of red tape, but in a way that does continue to give confidence to provide to investors and consumers in the context of funds management and financial services to invest across our region. Now, today we had a statement of understanding signed by Australia, Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, Thailand, and New Zealand. We are very confident that Singapore will be signing very soon. I certainly am very confident that Singapore will be a part of the Asia region funds passport into the future. And indeed, we are hoping that many other countries across the Asia Pacific will join this very important initiative. It goes to the heart of one of the key priorities of the Cebu Action Plan, greater financial integration across our region. We believe that the more economies across the Asia Pacific join the Asia Region Funds Passport, the better for our competitiveness, for the competitiveness of financial services providers in our region vis-à-vis those in other parts of the world, in particular Europe.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, sir. Good afternoon. I'm Kai Ordinario from Business Mirror. Regarding the PPP plans of the APEC, um, are these plans already a prelude to creating an APEC-wide facility for PPPs, similar to what was created in Addis Ababa recently?
Actually, as I mentioned, the nature of this document is it's non-binding. But at the same time, by creating the framework, it facilitates the sharing of best practices and cooperation across the member countries of APEC. For example, Australia has a global infrastructure hub, no? That actually has been quite helpful to the Philippines in setting up our own PPP center, and through the ADB, Australia has been helping us. It is this nature of cooperation that I think will make into reality the fourth pillar, which is increasing financing available for infrastructure. PPP is a topic that was actually started by Indonesia when they hosted the APEC meeting 2 years ago, and then carried on by China in their hosting last year. No? Singapore and the World Bank also has a infrastructure hub that is again another organization that can help in the process of sharing best practices for infrastructure and infrastructure financing across the region. The hope is that participation in PPPs can be much easier for APEC companies in the APEC region, as well as harmonization of terms and contract provisions can be done so that we can cut short the negotiation process for PPPs. But as I said, the Cebu Action Plans envisions a journey towards a vision that we believe is mutually beneficial.
Yes, please.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Ben De Vera from Philippine Daily Inquirer. For APEC finance ministers, what do you think are the short-term risks to economic growth here in the region? And will I understand that the Cebu Action Plan is a long-term vision. This will be a 10-year roadmap, but can this address also those short-term concerns or issues being faced by economies all over the region? And how, if not within the Cebu Action Plan, how can the APEC as a group address these? Thank you.
I might have a crack at this. Obviously, all of our economies across the Asia-Pacific face a series of common challenges. But what we also discussed in our meeting today, it's actually also important to look at the positives and at the opportunities. In this part of the world, we have achieved over the past year stronger growth than the global average. And moving forward, there is a lot of opportunity for us to achieve strong, sustainable, inclusive, and balanced growth, and the lift in living standards for our citizens across our region if we dedicate ourselves to the implementation of the Cebu Action Plan in a coordinated fashion. So the key streams of our action plan seek to address all of the risks and opportunities that we see. That is why we're focused on promoting stronger financial integration, including and in particular through initiatives like the Asia Region Funds Passport. That is why we're focused on advancing further fiscal reforms and transparency measures. That's why we're focused on financial resilience to deal with any external challenges that might come our way from the strongest possible economic and fiscal foundation. And that is in particular why we're focused on accelerating infrastructure development and financing opportunities. And looking at all of these different priorities together, what we're really focused on is how can we ensure that we're in the strongest possible position to deal with any external challenges that will continue to come our way in the current global economic conditions in particular, but also how can we put ourselves in the strongest possible position to take advantage of the opportunities that no doubt will come our way into the future and translate that into strong, sustainable, inclusive and balanced growth. And I guess the exciting thing for all of us here in the Asia Pacific is that we do live in the part of the world that will generate most of the global economic growth over decades to come. And it's very important for all of us here as member countries of APEC to continue to work together closely to coordinate our policy and reform efforts and to do the best we can every day to lift living standards across our region.
Thank you. Okay, please. For this round of press conference, I think well, we have room to accommodate 2 to 3 more quick questions.
Just a quick follow-up. So, of course, you mentioned the opportunities, but what exactly are these common challenges, external issues that have to be also addressed?
Well, I mean, obviously, all of our different economies have, to a degree, different challenges. I mean, one challenge that we have in common relates to how do we best attract investment into the infrastructure needs for our future. I mean, there is obviously an investment gap when it comes to infrastructure requirements across the Asia-Pacific region, and a lot of the discussion today and indeed in recent weeks and months under the chairmanship of the Philippines has focused on how we can better accelerate infrastructure development and financing. And indeed, previous presidencies by China and Indonesia have equally focused on this. And as our chairman indicated earlier, the G20 initiated the Global Infrastructure Hub, which is based in Sydney, which is very much focused on capability development and best practice development across the world, but also in our part of the world, on making sure that we fill that infrastructure gap. But there are a range of other issues. I mean, we do believe that greater financial integration across our region will, by removing regulatory barriers beyond borders, will help to provide greater liquidity and greater depth to our financial markets, which will in turn help facilitate investment in future economic growth opportunities across our region. So there's obviously, there are a whole range of specifics in the Cebu Action Plan which are designed to help deliver, help achieve strong, sustainable, inclusive and balanced growth in a way that will help lift living standards across our region moving forward.
Thank you. I'm going to call the gentleman from Business World.
Good afternoon. I'm Mikhail Flores of Business World. While the Cebu Action Plan is voluntary and non-binding in nature, what are the coordination mechanisms available among member economies to monitor the progress of members who have chosen to adopt a number or the initiatives under the Cebu Action Plan? And will there be future reports that we can expect that will monitor the progress of the economies who have chosen to adopt these initiatives? Thank you.
Thank you. On the previous question, first, I'd like to note that during the first session of our meeting today, we were given updates by the OECD, the IMF, the World Bank, and the ADB on the global economic situation. And later on, after this press conference, I'd like to point to the Secretary General of OECD, who I see, who I'm sure will be more than willing to give you his a brief of what he updated us with. Now, going to your question, Later on or early tomorrow, I will be having a meeting with the next host and his team so that I can turn over the Cebu Action Plan agenda and other items to the next host. No? There is a natural process of monitoring this because the finance minister's process is not one meeting. No? It is a series of meetings throughout the year and then through the next hosting. At the same time, there is again a parallel process under the APEC Business Advisory Council process. No? In fact, under the ABAC process, they meet at least 4 times a year. And they also have a chair for the finance minister's process. In this case, we were honored to work with Mr. Suzuki of Nomura. They will also have the pending items from the discussions today and will follow up, will make sure they'll monitor it through their part of the process. So it will be a twin PPP type process to make sure that we continue to give life, as I'd like to say, to the Cebu Action Plan.
I am calling the gentleman from Bloomberg.
Good afternoon, ministers. My name is Carl Yap. I work for Bloomberg News. I would like to address this question to China Vice Finance Minister Shi Yaoping. Ni hao. A lot of the global recent financial market volatility started in August when China devalued its currency. We would like to know how committed is China to restoring financial market stability. And we saw that in your statement, you all said that you will refrain from competitive devaluation. Do you think that that the yuan will become more stable in the coming months, and therefore that will also translate to stability across Asian currencies? Thank you. 谢谢你.
Thank you. For conveniently, I will speak in Chinese to answer your question. My colleague will do the translation. Hope you can feel comfortable about that. Yeah. 刚才您提到的问题呢，是中国的经济呢，我在昨天下午的闭门会上和在今天的财长会上。 那么我都讲过，中国现在确实面临着经济下行的压力。那么中国的资本市场包括股票市场也发生了一些波动，在8月份的时候。那么汇率呢，由于技术性的原因，也做了一些变动。但是这些呢，都不是主要的矛盾，都是阶段性的，甚至呢是在1、2个月之内发生的。 那么中国政府呢，已经采取了借鉴其他别的国家所曾经采取过的措施，那么对金融市场、对资本市场对汇率都进行了调控。那么现在呢，应该说金融市场基本稳定，我们的经济呢正在朝着持续稳定的方向在发展。
Thank you for your question. Your question is about China's economy. In the retreat meeting in the yesterday's afternoon and in the finance ministers meeting today, I mentioned that China's economy indeed faces some downward pressure, and there are some volatilities in the capital market, in the stock market, and also the exchange rate of RMB has taken place some changes because of the technical reasons. However, all of these problems are not the major conflicts. They are only temporary phenomena and can only last the past 1 to 2 months. And China has drawn on the experiences of other countries to make macro control and adjustment on the financial market, the capital market, and on the exchange rate. So now we can say that the financial market has restored the basic stability, and our economy is running in a stable and sound manner.
至于您提到的在财长会的声明中提到的 反对竞争性贬值。那么这都是各国财长 APEC 财长们共同讨论得出的结论。中国同意这一点，中国并没有进行竞争性贬值。中国的上个月的货币这个汇率的变动，那么刚才我已经讲，完全是技术性的变动，所以呢这一点不会这个影响到今后金融市场的稳定。那么我刚才已经讲到了，中国的经济呢，上半年的经济增长速度是7%，那么7%的这样一个增长速度，尽管相比中国前几年的增长速度来比呢是有所放缓，但是仍然在全世界范围来看，仍然是一个比较高的增长速度。而且呢，中国的经济增长潜力，在通过进一步结构优化和深化经济体制的改革，还会继续释放出更多的潜力来。我们相信中国的经济增长会有一个平稳协调的增长，也会继续对世界经济的稳定发展做出自己的贡献。谢谢。
And regarding your question about the competitive depreciation of the currency, this statement is the result of the discussion of the finance ministers' meeting. China agrees that we will not adopt the practice of competitive depreciation. And I've also mentioned that the exchange rate changes in the last month is totally because of the technical reasons and factors, and it will not affect the stability of the financial market in the future. Also, for China, in the first half of this year, our GDP grew by 7%. Such a growth rate, although slows down compared with what we have in the previous years, but it remains a very high level worldwide. And with our structural reform, the optimization of economic systems, we will continue to unleash even more potential for economic growth. So we have the confidence that China will maintain the stable and balanced economic growth and make our due contribution to the world economy.
Okay, thank you. I'm calling the lady from the third row.
Hello, good afternoon. Katino Campo from NHK. So I'm going to address my question to the Finance Minister of Malaysia. Hi, sir. So, sir, in this meeting, you discussed about financial resilience to market volatility and external shocks. And Malaysia, being one of the emerging markets in the region, is being affected by external shocks, particularly the yuan devaluation and also the US rate hike. So, sir, how do you see these two issues, the yuan devaluation, the US rate hike? So, what's your opinion or concern about this?
Thank you. As you all know, that I think our country is affected. One of the major factors that affected our country is actually our commodities. You look at almost 30% of our revenue is based on our commodities, like crude oils have dropped by almost 50%, and also our palm oil have dropped almost 25%. And second factors that we are affected in as far as our currency is concerned. I think for 8 months, I think our currency have dropped almost 19.4%, and certainly I think it will affect how do we manage our economy going forward. And what we plan to do is that with the shortfall in our revenue, we need to relook again and how we allocate some of the our budget constraint that we have going forward in 2016. And we will focus on ensuring that whatever operating expenditure and the capital expenditure that we're going to spend, it has to benefit, give us the impact on revenue or social in as far as the economy is concerned.
Follow up, okay.
Yeah, to the ministers. Were you able to discuss about the U.S. rate hike? Because in the final statement, there was a mention of the China's devaluation, but nothing about the U.S. rate hike, considering it's also one of the challenges that you're facing right now.
It was just mentioned as part of an update by, I think, the IMF. But there was really no detailed discussion.
Okay, thank you. We have room for one last question from the floor, if there is still any. Who's brave enough to grab the last chance to ask questions to our ministers? Okay, if there is none, so I am going to bring this round of press conference to a close. For our closing, may I first ask Finance Secretary Cesar Purisima to answer this question. The Cebu Action Plan has already been launched, and we are turning over the APEC hosting to Peru next year. So what more can we expect from the Philippines in terms of championing the 4 pillars of the Cebu Action Plan?
We will work closely with our colleagues from Peru to make sure that there is proper turnover of the Cebu Action Plan agenda. At the same time, these 4 pillars apply to us also. And we would like to implement them on our own as it refers to domestic issues. And we will continue to work with our other colleagues so that we can share our own best practices and we can learn from their own initiatives, especially in the space of infrastructure financing. I believe our colleague from Peru would like to give a brief statement on what to expect from their hosting next year.
Thank you. During the hosting of the finance ministers process in 2016, Peru would like to focus its effort in several initiatives of the Cebu Action Plan that we believe will ensure the sustainable growth of our economies. In first place, Peru wants to focus its work in activities related to financial inclusion. We have to mention that according to the World Bank, within the member economies of APEC, only Peru, Indonesia, and Papua New Guinea have a national strategy for financial inclusion, and economies such as Chile, China, and Mexico are in process to develop their own strategies. Understanding that financial inclusion is a continuous process for promoting access and responsible use of financial services, it is necessary that this process is led and guided by an appropriate institutional framework. Regarding that matter, Peru encourages the exchange of experiences on financial institution national strategies within policymakers, researchers, and international consultants, and the discussion of the process of design, implementation, and monitoring of financial inclusion policies. These activities will promote the elaboration of guidelines for best practices in the development of financial inclusion strategies and the statement of a minimum context for the development of future strategies. Also, under the multidimensional approach for financial inclusion suggested by the World Bank for the design of this kind of strategies, boost access to finance to micro, small, and medium enterprises should be considered one of the lines of action to develop. In this sense, initiatives to share experiences within APEC would enable for the responsible financing environment for MSME will allow to improve the policy design related with financial inclusion in each economy and spur to aligning the objectives. Peru proposed first, identify the gaps of each economy through the comparison of the alignment of what have been achieved in each APEC economy with the World Bank's general principles of the credit bureaus. Second, review the experiences of the members about developing of international collateral mechanisms. And third, share the experience of the APEC members in the design of regulatory frameworks to spur the development of new financial instruments in financial and capital markets. On the other hand, Peru encouraged APEC economies to work on disaster risk financing and insurance with the aim to build financial resiliency and learn from each other's experiences in order to improve this resiliency. As we know, most of our economies meet substantial challenges in the road to sustainable development due to natural hazards which can put public finances under heavy stress, like El Niño, for example, that has forced Peruvian government to set aside 0.5 of the GDP to in the 2016 budget to fight against that. For this reason, Peru proposes to build capacities about set up and develop sustainable catastrophic insurance pool to rapidly improve insurance penetration for dwellings. Moreover, we will work on the improvement of modeling capabilities in order to access innovative tools like parametric reinsurance and CAT bonds, catastrophic bonds, at a reasonable cost. Finally, it's important to focus in PPP infrastructure. During the 2014 APEC Finance Ministers in Beijing, the finance ministers reaffirmed the importance of capacity building in the public sector for promoting PPP infrastructure financing and learning from different practices across APEC economies. We believe the Knowledge Portal initiative, which is one of the parts of the pillars of the Cebu Action Plan, will help achieve these important goals. In that sense, Peru will be interested in implementing the Knowledge Portal, an initiative to create an online repository of PPP infrastructure projects, including policy, legal, and regulatory framework, tender processes, and sample contracts for PPP and non-PPP projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We would like to thank all the finance ministers and heads of delegations for your warm participation. We are now going to move to the second round of press conference, this time with the Philippines Finance Secretary Cesar Purisima, Peru's Vice Minister De Felipe, and the representatives from the Finance Sector Roundtable. May we request the other finance ministers and other heads of delegations to please take your seats in front of the room. Also, we would like to call on Mr. Stephen DeCray, Mr. Hiroyuki Suzuki, and Mr. Jay Collins, who led the discussions at the Finance Sector Roundtable, to join our party on stage for the press conference of the highlights of the Finance Roundtable. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Okay, to our friends from the media, I'm sure some of you already know that in parallel to the finance ministers meeting were meetings of finance sector representatives. These include the CEOs of investment banks, insurance companies, and other financial institutions. So may we ask Secretary Purisima and perhaps Mr. De Felipe to give their appreciation to the participation of the private sector and to expound on their involvement in this activity?
Thank you. This was done with the help and cooperation of the head of APEC for the finance minister's process, Mr. Suzuki. Again, we thought that if we are to give as much opportunity for the Cebu Action Plan to be exposed to the private sector, we thought the best way was to have a parallel session where we invited the leaders of the banking sector in the region as well as the insurance industry and the micro insurance and microfinance industry to meet as a group to talk about the Cebu Action Plan, ask questions, give suggestions, and then have the opportunity to sit down with the finance ministers and the other head of delegations to be able to exchange ideas. In fact, I heard so many new ideas during the past day and a half or 2 days that I think our challenge now will be to make sure that we gather this, distill this, and be able to ask our partners in the ABAC and then the next host of APEC so that there is proper passing of the baton, so to speak. We were fortunate that Dr. Stephen Decree of the Asian Institute of Management also agreed to help as co-chair of the private sector meeting so that Mr. Suzuki doesn't have to bear all the chairing load. But again, for a first attempt, I've been very pleased, both with the attendance, but more importantly with the enthusiasm and the participation of the private sector. I think this is a good example of a PPP. Sorry, at the same time, I'd like to thank Mr. Jay Collins, of the Vice Chair of Citibank, who not only helped in the private sector session, but also made a presentation during the Minister's Retreat that led to a very interesting discussion afterwards. Thank you.
Peru and the Philippines shared a common, some common traits. One of them is to having been grown at a pace of about 6% a year for the last, 10 in the case of Peru, 5 years in the case of the Philippines. And we have been able to achieve that because of our support to the private sector. We share the vision that the private sector is the engine for development. We governments wouldn't have revenues, tax revenues, without the private sector earning money and having benefits. So we share that vision, and we share the vision that you should foster the private sector. Jay yesterday was telling us about the size of the gap we need to fill in order to finance all the infrastructure we need. And of course, we can only do that having a strong private sector in our economies. So I'm very thankful for being here. I'm very thankful for you being here and helping us achieving that goal.
Thank you. And lastly, I may also ask Mr. Jay Collins to give just a quick highlights of the discussions in the finance sector roundtable.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Chairman, members of the delegation, finance ministers. This was truly an honor to be a facilitator for this process. I would just like to say a few words about the process. One, we're in a new era where the growth challenges facing the world in APEC require partnership between the private sector and public sector of an entirely new level. And I think the last 2 days represented a depth of dialogue and cooperation that takes us to that new level. We were able to sit down, for example, today in a relatively new forum where we paired finance ministers from countries with business leaders at each table, given very specific topics to develop detailed recommendations, exchange views on the Cebu Action Plan, compare notes, and then present recommendations back to the group as a whole. Again, that type of cooperation is something that required both Secretary Purissima's leadership, but all of the finance ministers involved embracing the views and opinions of the private sector. Second, this was a very strategic-oriented thought process in terms of the issues we tackled, but actually was very, while non-binding, action-oriented. So in every specific pillar, there were literally dozens of recommendations that came out of it. In the financial service sector, for example, when we looked at the volatility in markets, when we look at resilience in markets, we talked very specifically about regional financial integration, about fund passports. We talked about repo markets, collateral, derivatives, the kinds of things that will add stability and integration to markets going forward. Again, as the ministers said, we did discuss in detail infrastructure, the funding gap of infrastructure, and the importance of the development of capital markets, both global and local, to help bridge that gap. And of course, in the region, perhaps one of the most important initiatives was the focus on pension funds and the need for both insurance companies and pension funds to be large purchasers of infrastructure assets going forward as we move beyond the regulatory hurdles of Basel III in the bank market to the capital markets. Of course, foremost on many of the leaders' minds was financial inclusion and the growth plight in particular of the SMEs and what can be done given bank constraints, the regulatory framework, and certainly the opportunity of technology to both develop solutions for the unbanked in the bank market and more sophisticated solutions to finance the SMEs. Everything from how we treat collateral, how we better securitize the SMEs in developing trade solutions, in particular trade finance, supply chain finance solutions for the SMEs so as to help them grow faster. Again, both infrastructure and the SMEs were all about capital markets and additional financing solutions for those challenges. So finally, I would just say that as certainly Citigroup and I looked at APEC, one of the things that was abundantly clear is there was an embracing of the multilateral community and the good work of the G20, ADB, the IMF and World Bank. There was no sense of reinventing the wheel, starting over. There was a mechanism to reach out to those organizations, bring them in, build on what was already out there, and particularly, as was discussed earlier, the Global Infrastructure Fund, Global Infrastructure Hub, was a core part of the G20 initiative that APEC will use going forward to build on the cross-fertilization and best practice in the infrastructure space. So again, thank you very much for our participation in this. And again, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
At this point, because we have gone slightly over time, may I invite everyone to please watch the audiovisual presentation prepared by the Department of Finance and the Investor Relations Office. Thank you very much. At this point, we would like to excuse Finance Secretary Cesar Purisima and Vice Minister De Felipe because they have flights to catch. Okay, so to our members of the media, if you have questions, you may raise them now. We observe the same house rules. Okay, perhaps you're still formulating questions. May I ask Mr. Stephen DeCray, and then followed by Mr. Hiroyuki Suzuki to also share some of their thoughts on what transpired during the roundtable.
Okay, thank you. As a generalist and as an educator, I was quite intrigued by the financial issues that were shared, but more interested perhaps in the process. I think it's no surprise when you have a finance secretary like Cesar Purisima, who comes from the business side, to involve the corporate comments and to get the engagement of companies. And what I observed is the benefit of that was not only educating people about the Cebu Action Plan, but getting some really interesting ideas that came out during the lunch. So as a newcomer to this process, I say I applaud the engagement of the corporate side, and I hope this notion continues in Peru.
Mr. Suzuki?
Well, as a member of APEC, as well as the chair of Asia Pacific Financial Forum, I'd like to echo a comment of our colleague Jay as well as Steve. At the same time, I'd like to add a little bit more flavor on Philippines challenge and also the APEC challenge. APFF, Asia Pacific Financial Forum, was established in September 2013 on the occasion of the Bali Finance Ministers meeting under Indonesian year. Since then, we have been working very closely with Finance Ministers process, and especially this year, with the strong leadership of Secretary Purisima and strong support from Department of Finance of the Philippines, we have been achieving a lot. And especially, I'd like to touch upon the continuity and the consistency issue beyond Philippine year. As APFF is well embedded and well plugged in with the Finance Minister's process, and also we are now moving to set up a kind of cooperation situation with other ministers' process like FMM ministers. We are very much sure that our effort in the private side is very much well coordinated in finance ministers executing the Cebu Action Plan in the coming 10 years. So, and also I'd like to report that in APFF, we have a lot of wisdom and we have expertise from more than 140 institutions, multilateral, private, academic, etc., supporting our activities. So I'm very much optimistic about the future of Cebu Action Plan as well as our activities in APFF. And that resulted in a fruitful discussion in the past 2 days. I'd like to echo the view of our colleague Jay and Steve about that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We are now opening the floor to questions, if there are any. Yes, please.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Ben De Vera of Philippine Daily Inquirer. In general, for the private sector, what are the opportunities and challenges you see in APEC, the member economies, and also how attractive is APEC as a market for you to invest in or to do business? Thank you.
Well, as Secretary Prisma kindly mentioned, that the APEC is a kind of region to decide the future of the global economy, because it itself occupies, let's say, more than 50% of GDP, and also opportunity is that the APEC countries have a lot of common things, common interest to share, because it is really a region surrounding the Pacific Ocean. And it also shares a lot of issues. SME financing issue is one of them. We may refer to that issue by using financial inclusion. And it's kind of really kind of driver for the future economy of APEC. And also how to support the economy in this region by improving the efficiency. That leads us to the point that we have to be very serious in discussing about the infrastructure related. And in that context, we need a good capital market. We need a good player for the long-term investment, like insurance or pension. And the reason that I'm very much optimistic is we have a combination of the developed and developing countries here. And developed countries like Canada or Australia have a huge accumulation of pension assets to be reallocated to areas in which the infrastructure investment is the kind of key issue. And that really creates real, let's say, quite a comprehensive and complementary situation among the economies. So how to connect those economies side by side with our activities in the private sector is a kind of key. So Silver Action Plan is the kind of thing that we have some message, strong message from the public side or government side that they commit on a long-term base. Of course, there are ups and downs in the market. I experienced that in my 30 years more history in investment banking. But still, in the very bottom of the flow, we have a strong flow of lever moving to the further development of this region. So I strongly believe that the activities here, side by side with Silver Action Plan, will bring a kind of good result. Despite the fact that we have a number of issues, very short term, very much fluctuated, very much volatile. But the fundamental thing is that we have a common barrier in the mid to long run base. So that's very much encouraging thing for us.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? I think we have room for just one or two more very quick questions. Yes, please.
Good afternoon, Mikhail Flores of Business World. Mr. Suzuki, APEC submitted its report to finance ministers in which you detailed at least 8 priority reforms that economists should consider. Now that you've seen the Cebu Action Plan, how satisfied are you in terms of how the finance ministers adopted or considered the suggestions that was put forward by APEC in this year's meeting? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Well, actually, Silver Action Plan, I think, is a kind of result of the discussions, even the finance minister's side, for the past 3-4 years. I just mentioned about the birth of APFF in Indonesia year, then succeeded by China year and Philippine year, and we'll be passing to Peru and Vietnam. In the course of the discussion, we are working very closely with the finance minister sector. And the key ingredient of Silver Action Plan is also a kind of key issue for private sector, which we already identified and we already are working on under APEC as well as APFF. So in APEC website, you will find our report in 2014 submitted to Finance Minister's process to China. It's an interim report covering the major issues, which is very much identical to what we see in Several Action Plan. And also, we just submitted our progress report of APFF as well as APEC Finance and Economic Working Groups report. We clearly see that we are in line with Finance Minister's process, mean that none of the issues are long-term issue, none of it is a mid-term issue, or something that we can settle it in a short period of time, like Several Action Plan just designated. But we are very much satisfied with the contents. And from private sector point of view, they cover key important elements of what we will see as a challenge for this region's financial and economic integration.
I can allow one last question if there is still any. Please.
Good afternoon. This is my name is Jindy Galolo from Sunstar Cebu, the local media. My question is a follow-up to the earlier question. On the part of the private sector, how attractive is the Philippines in terms of infrastructure investment? Thank you.
Earlier this summer, I had the opportunity of working with a number of the members of the Filipino cabinet, including Secretary Parissima, to take them on a tour of the United States to meet with infrastructure investors. And at the request of Secretary Parissima, we ended up meeting with institutional investors in the infrastructure space across the United States and presenting the infrastructure plan of the government of the Philippines. The feedback was tremendous. I think the process of presenting both concrete, specific infrastructure opportunities, but importantly, to paint the picture of the extraordinary success of what the Aquino administration has done macroeconomically and fundamentally in the Philippines, as well as the framework for how infrastructure decisions are getting taken and made in the Philippines, was a success. The best practices that the Philippines have adopted in looking at what others have done in studying and taking advice from the private sector as to how to make the Philippines a more attractive place is paying off. And of course, there's still more work to be done. But I would say that both the Philippines is and continues to be an attractive place for infrastructure investment.
Okay, thank you. On that note, I am bringing this press conference to a close. Thank you very much, Mr. De Cray, Mr. Suzuki, and Mr. Collins. Thank you also to our friends from the media for your warm participation. And for all of us, may we all have a safe flights back home. Thank you.